In this video, we're going to talk about slope. Slope tells us how steep a line is. Just like when you drive on highway, we often see the grade. If the highway is like a small hill going up or going down, we usually see a sign that tells us the grade is like 3% or 5%. And so grade actually is the slope, but it's written in the format of a percent. And we already talked about how to convert a decimal to a percent. In algebra class, we don't really need to convert the slope from the decimal to a percent, but grade is actually the slope. So how is slope determined? And notice that I have two lines here, and the orange line here compared to the black line here, it's steeper. And the concept of slope is we want to have a number that tells us a big number means the line or the hill is steeper. A smaller number means the line or the hill is flatter. So what we gonna how do we define that so we can get a number like that? So when we look at, let's say we both, let's start from look at I'm gonna draw a line all the way down. So if we drive at the same point from here and to go up these two different hills, and notice that since the orange one is steeper, and we're gonna have to and we have to use more power, or as you can see, the rise is, so I'm going to draw a horizontal line here and a vertical line. So as you can see here, if we drive from this spot A, let's call this spot B, and this is spot B prime. When we drive from here up there, we have the same horizontal run or horizontal distance, but when we look at the vertical distance or vertical rise, as you can see here, to drive on the orange line, we have a much bigger rise to go. But if you drive on the black line, the rise is only this much. So this is the vertical rise for the orange line, and this is the vertical rise for the black line. And again, and the horizontal line for both lines are the same, but the steep line has a much bigger vertical rise. So that gives us the idea to define slope as rise, the vertical rise, we can just say rise, divided by the horizontal run, or you can just say run. Because with the same run, let's say if the run is 100 foot, but the vertical rise for the orange line is let's say 10 foot, and then but for the black line it's actually only 3 foot. So as you can see, when we if we define the slope as the vertical rise over the horizontal run, so for the orange line we're going to have the slope 10 foot rise over 100 foot run, but for the black line we're gonna only have 3 divided by 100. And if we convert to percent, this is exactly 10%, this is 3%. And we know if a highway has a 10% grade, it's gonna be steeper than the 3% grade. But if we convert it to decimal, this is gonna be 0.1 and this is 0.03. So which is definitely 0.1 is a bigger number than 0.03. So it makes sense to define the slope as vertical rise divided by horizontal run, or you can just say rise over run. That way and a bigger rise will give us a bigger slope or grade. Okay, so first of all, we need to look at see how the formula is generated. So by the definition that we need to find the vertical rise, and when we look at the points, so how do we find the vertical rise? When we now we can just focus on one of the lines. Let's say we're going to focus on the orange line, and the beginning point, if we call it x1 and y1, and remember every point in the previous video we talked about this can be described as an order pair. The first component is called x, the second component is called y. Here I use the subscripts because I'm going to have another point, the end point, which is also x and y. But to distinguish them, we're going to give subscripts. So we call the beginning point x1, y1, and the end point x2, y2. So now if we look at, again, I'm going to get rid of, we're just going to focus on the orange line. So in order to find the horizontal and the vertical distance, I'm going to draw this one more time here. Okay, so the horizontal run, and notice that the maybe we can use specific numbers that can help us figure out the formula quickly. So if I have, let's say this point is, I guess the graph, I'm going to try to avoid negative numbers because it's going to be a little difficult for us to understand. And so I'm going to just say this is 2, 3, and this is 4, 7. Okay, so when we look at the horizontal distance, because x coordinate is 2 here, and this x coordinate is 4 here, when we go from 2 to 4, and we know that the distance we traveled is 4 minus 2, which equals 2. So again, if we look at the number line, let's say this 0 is right here. If we move from this point to that point, we traveled 2 miles because we deduct 2 from 4. So because from here to here, that's 4. From here to here is 2. So we deduct 2 from 4. That gives us the distance we traveled. And similarly for the vertical rise, and because this number right here corresponds to 3, because y1 is equal to 3. So this is 3, and imagine you're on the 3rd floor. And then after we drive up the hill, we reach the 7th floor. So the number of floors we traveled will be 7 minus 3, which is equal to 4. So this is a specific case, but in general, if we just use x1 and y1, notice right here, this is our x1, and this is x2, and this number is y1, 3, and this is y2. And notice that when you look at the distance we traveled, we used 4 minus 2, which is 4 minus 2, which is x2 minus x1. And so here, how do we get horizontal run? That is exactly x2 minus x1. That would give us horizontal run. Similarly, how do we get the vertical rise? And notice we did 7 minus 3. That's exactly y2 minus y1. So y2 minus y1 will give us the rise. Okay, so that's why the formula is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So if you think about it, the second coordinate is a number on the y-axis. That means we're either moving up or moving down. So if we subtract these two numbers, that will give us the rise. But x-coordinates are the numbers on the x-axis. So if we subtract, we're going to move left or right. So if we subtract these two, it's going to give us the difference between them. So that will give us the run. So first of all, we understand how we got this formula. So now we're going to apply the formula to solve for the slope. So here I have two examples. So the first example, we're given the beginning point that is 2, 3. the end point is 1, 7. In the second example, I put some negative numbers, and because it is possible, not all, most likely, not all numbers going to be all positive. So we're going to apply the formula. Now, a good tip is when you apply the formula, if you can label, then again, the first component, first number in the order pair is always x. The second is always y. So this is x, this is y, this is x, this is y. But since we have two pairs, for the first pair, you can use the subscripts 1 and 1. The second one, you can use the subscripts 2. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So now once we have them all labeled, we will not plug in the round numbers. So here I'm going to apply the formula. Again, this formula comes from rise over run. Rise means vertical distance change, so it's going to be y's. And so y2 here is 7 minus y1, that's 3. So maybe one thing you could do is, because I often see some students make mistakes when they plug in numbers, so you could line them up. So this is x2, y2 on the top, and x1, y1 on the bottom. And then when you subtract, you're subtracting vertically. So y2 minus 1, which is 7 minus 3. And then x2 minus x1, which is 1 minus 2. So now we're going to simplify each expression. So 7 minus 3 is 4, and 1 minus 2 is -1. And then a positive divided by negative give us negative. So we got the answer -4, because 4 divided by 1 is 4. So that's going to be our slope. Now, if we have a negative slope, that means the line is going down where we're going down the hill. If we get a positive slope, and because we're kind of like, our rise is negative, we're like kind of taking that when we take the elevator, when we're going down, and so from the 7th floor to the 3rd floor, and that, of course, that gives us the negative number. But if we get a positive slope, it just tells us we're going up the hill. All right, so now let's look at this example here. So same thing. So I'm gonna maybe do this. So y2 minus y1. Be very careful with the sign numbers. So this is y2 minus this is y1, because we're gonna have a bunch of minus signs, because y2, y1, they both have the minus, and also in the formula tells us to do difference, which also has a minus sign. So now how to subtract the sign numbers? So we use the rule keep, change, and change. So now we're going to turn the question to an addition problem, and -7 plus 3 gives us -4, because we have $7 debt plus $3 credit. We have to end up with the debt and $4 more debt. The bottom, same thing here. So we're going to subtract x1 from x2. So we do 1 minus 2, that gives us -1. Now when we divide two negative numbers, that gives us a +4. So that means these two, they have one is negative, the other is positive. So again, negative means the line goes down, going down the hill, and positive means we're going up the hill. So that's how we apply the slope formula to solve for the slopes.